Well, welcome everyone to day 5 of the Renew Virtual Women's Wellness Summit and 5-day Power Up Mindset Challenge. I am so excited to have you all here with us. I truly believe that this has been a blessed and ordained week. Um, just all the different speakers have been incredible. And I am humbled to share the stage with them as your featured speaker for the Sisters in Law series today. This is the very first time we've had a Sisters in Law series as a part of the summit. And I think it was a hit. I think it was a big hit. Bringing Black women attorneys onto the stage to talk about all things career, life, and well-being. And again, I chose this group of women because I happen to be one. So I know some of these ladies, and I understand from their perspective when I talk about being overworked, overlooked, and overwhelmed. I understand it from that perspective when I talk about the juggle struggle. And I understand it from that perspective when I talk to women about being in a high stakes, high stress, high responsibility career. And I truly believe, I know for a fact that women across careers are experiencing that. Women in multiple different industries. Have you talked to the teachers lately about what is going on? Okay, that's a high stakes, high stress, high responsibility career. Have you talked to the medical doctors about what's going on? It's like saving people's lives are the least of their concerns, dealing with the scrutiny that they're under and the politics that they have to deal with. That's a high stakes, high stress, high responsibility career. Okay. And women from all different walks of life. As I said the other day, being a stay at home mom is a high contact sport. Okay. And so that's high stakes, it's high responsibility, and it's high stress. All right. And so I just want all of the women in this space, professional Black women, to feel seen and heard in this conversation. And I actually think our sisters in law have done a great job of that, truly connecting us all across our common experience. And so I hope that I can continue in that vein today as the featured speaker for today. I will introduce myself briefly. My name is Karla Aghedo. I'm an attorney by trade. I've been practicing for 13 years. I specialize in representing healthcare providers in federal criminal investigations and trials. I graduated from Iowa State University for undergrad and the University of Virginia School of Law in 2010. After that, I went into a year as a state prosecutor with Anderson County in the district attorney's office. And even though I was only planning to be there for a year and thought I would just be an intern because it was a gap in an economic crisis, let me explain that quickly. I was a summer associate at 3 different law firms, and I had 3 different offers, praise God, for me to have a job out of law school. Um, all of my expenses were paid studying for the bar, praise God. All of the living expenses and the fees for the course and the fees for the test itself. So that summer, all I had to do was sit there and get all that information in my head. I've seen women have jobs and kids and whole families trying to prepare for the bar exam. And that is crazy. So I know God gifted me with a blessing in what I had. And 2 of those 3 law firms were going to start me on time in the fall of 2010 after graduating from law school. And I'd have a full time job and more money than I could have ever dreamed that I would have in October of 2010. The third law firm decided to defer our class for a year. And instead of starting us in October of 2010, it would start us in October of 2011 as a way to save money in the midst of an economic crisis. And I remain surprised by how many women I mentor and guide who are younger than me who have no idea what I'm talking about when I talk about the financial crisis of 2008, 2009, and really carried into 2012 and 13, right? So for those of us who were in professional schools at the time, hoping to get great jobs right out of that, there was a ton of anxiety, a ton of angst, and a ton of fallout, frankly. Some firms were reneging offers. Some firms canceled the entire program, didn't bring anybody. Others let the summer associates go through the whole summer working their butts off and then made no offers, right? And others said, we'll start you, but it's going to be about 15 months later. And then others, like one of my great friends, her firm delayed them until January of 2012. So that was 15 months delay from the regular start date. And by March of 2012, that entire firm had imploded, no longer existed. Their executives were being criminally prosecuted. Okay. And 110 years of it being one of the best firms in the world was completely destroyed. So what are we talking about? We're talking about a ton of financial insecurity and angst, a whole bunch of crazy, a whole bunch of people whose stories went differently than the way that they had expected when they originally started in law school. Okay. You'll hear stories like this from all kinds of people, right? So on the other side, there were people who owned homes and they were being displaced. There were people who were in the middle of their careers and had built all their plans and intentions around those careers, built their families around those careers, and those were imploded. Well, there I was with three offers, praise God. Two of them would have started me in October of 2010, and the other in October of 2011. And I took the one that would start me in October of 2011 because I was thrilled by the opportunity that God had put into my story to spend a year in service. And I had the opportunity to be an assistant district attorney where I got trial experience that I would not have gotten if I had gone straight into the law firm, where I had the opportunity to live close to my parents and my little brother at the time who was still at home. I was able to be active in the local church congregation that year. I was able to lose like 25 pounds and lead a group of women in a second rendition of the Healthy Heart Challenge I had created. And we had a program called Faithfully Fit at church. All of those things became a part of my story because I chose to take the path that would have given me less income for that year, right? And I would have been living in a small town. I did live in a very small town instead of going straight to Washington, D.C. But oh, how God will write story if we'll let Him, right? So after that year, I went into what we call big law. My firm had 2,500 lawyers in 48 offices around the world. I was in the Washington, D.C. office, which was the largest office with over 500 attorneys, a huge staff to support that, right there in the shadow of the White House at the intersection of 13th and F. Um, it was an incredible experience when you talk about it on a stage, when you see what I was wearing and where I was going and the types of meetings that I was in. And it was also a soul-wrenching experience because of the amount of time that I was spending doing it, 80, 90 hours a week, 60 weeks on I mean 60 hours on a slow week, okay, sleeping under my desk on a regular basis, um, feeling like much of the work I was doing wasn't particularly meaningful, didn't tap into my passion and into my purpose, right? But this is what you're supposed to do in order to prove yourself as a successful Black woman who went to a top 10 law school, and everybody goes into big law. And so this is what you have to do as well to show your chops. And that's what I did. And I did that for almost a decade. I moved from our Washington, D.C. office to our Houston office in August of 2017. And the way that I would have told my story might have sounded pretty good externally, but what I was telling myself every day was a rather disempowering story. And so now, as I introduce myself to you as the founder and CEO of Houston Wellness Workshops for Women, where I curate wellness retreats, resources, recipes, and rescues for professional women like you who need to reclaim their power through wellness. Part of my story is a rescue of myself, right? Part of my story is thanking God that He rescued me from what might have seemed like a dream to someone else. And I'm so thankful to now be an executive wellness mindset coach where I help women design the life that they want to live so that they can show up in power in all the spaces where they lead. And I do that by focusing on a foundation of wellness of mind, body, and spirit. Because I just don't believe we can be out here hustling, grinding, and trying to win in our careers if we are neglecting the foundation, the way that God made us. And so I'm excited to talk to you about how I started to rewrite that story and how you can as well. Okay. You know, this is so consistent with my desire to help women uncover their purpose so that they can be positioned to be powerful. That's what I do. That's what I'm about. And when we talk about uncovering your purpose, right? And we talk about being positioned to be powerful, um, I really want us to understand that we are the authority in our own lives and we get to write our own narrative. Let's see if you guys can see me because I couldn't see you in that moment. I'm sharing my screen. Can I get some feedback, ladies? Can you see me?
Yes, and we can see your screen.
Okay. And now if I put it into presentation view, um, you can see me and just the full screen.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. All right. Well, it seems like I should have done this enough in these virtual environments for me to be able to see you and the presentation at the same time, but I can't. Oh, well. So here we go. We're talking trial style, positioning yourself in your own story in 2024. And coming to you as both an attorney and an executive wellness mindset coach. And I'm leveraging my experience specifically as a trial attorney. You know, in the art of trial, it really is theater. Okay. Not that it's fake. Okay. Not that it's all acting, but absolutely there is a script, there is a story, and we are intending to persuade people in one direction or another. Okay. Some people ask me, Karla, how can you present people who you know are guilty? Well, first of all, I've never represented anybody that I knew for sure, right, had done it. Okay. But I also, secondly, believe that we've all done it. We are all guilty. None of us are perfect. We've all made mistakes. As believers, we know that we've all sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. Okay, so I actually don't believe that there are innocent people. Okay, and I believe that we're all guilty. Okay, so now when you take that into the criminal context, it's my third point. Okay, which is that these people have been accused. They've been accused of something, and these things are being alleged. And I believe it is so important to make the government prove it. Why? Because that protects all of our rights. That puts us all in a position to not be railroaded by a story that is not accurate or complete. Okay, so that's what I do. And that's why I take pride as a Christian, godly woman who values truth and honesty. I take pride in defending people and ultimately defending freedom, all of us. So, what do I do as a trial lawyer? Well, I've got to position the story. I've already introduced myself, There's a few stats about me. Okay. The one thing I wanted to share with you here is that this is a picture of me. It's a panoramic picture of me at my very first ever personal wellness retreat. Okay. I want to talk to you more about that. But the story here is that I had just been rescued from my worst days ever. I had just been rescued, and that rescue came in the form of 6 weeks out of work. And you might tell a story that says, that sounds like a failure. That sounds like a loss, right? That sounds like somebody who was too weak to make it and they couldn't cut it and they weren't tough enough. Or you might tell a story about the most powerful woman in the room, the woman who says, I'm clear about who I am and whose I am. And I no longer have to prove anything to anyone. And I know that my power comes when I take steps back and take steps away so that I can step up and show up in power. So that's what this picture represents for me. This is me declaring my freedom, embracing my joy, and starting to take hold of my own story. So, in your story, right, you're going to follow a trial lawyer who is going to help you to position yourself in your story in 2024. The first thing you need to know is that you have the power and the authority to write your own story. Don't let anyone else pick up the pen and write that story for you. No one outside of you should be telling your story. Probably more importantly, you've got to work on the person who's talking inside of you about how they talk about the story. And I say they because it could be you talking, or it could be all the naysayers in your head that have come together as a council to hang out in your head, and they've been there for years and you have never confronted them. I have a whole mindset session on home based thinking, okay, where essentially we've got these thoughts that we adopted from a long time ago, many times from well meaning people. Okay, and they are sitting up there in our heads, still talking, still trying to run the show, and we have never confronted them. Maybe it was your mom, your grandma, your auntie, a teacher, preacher, an old boyfriend, an old friend. Okay. You could probably recognize people who didn't mean you any good. Okay. But what about the people who you loved, who you trusted, and who were just doing their best to try to take care of you when they said what they said? Right. Okay. And now you've got that in your head and you are crediting that version of the story or those words more than the story that you have the authority to write. Drop a hashtag authority. Hashtag authority. I have the authority to write my own story. And I first got to tell it to myself. So there might be a narrative that's going on in my head right now that I borrowed from someone else, and I've never quite taken control over the story that I will tell to myself first, and then ultimately the one that I'll tell to others. Okay? We know the power of our tongue, and we know that life and death lies in the power of our tongue. So when we talk about writing our story, we start in the mind and we clean out the old story and the old mess, right? Things like, oh, I can't do anything like that. We've never done anything like that. People like us don't do things like that. People around here don't do things like that, right? My family's not like that. We're not like that. Black people don't do stuff like that. That's white folks, right? Oh, she thinks she's better than us. I think I'm better than her. Whatever it is, okay? Oh, people are going to start thinking that I think that I'm better than them. And I don't want them to think that. Okay. A lot of these stories that we tell ourselves, these phrases that we have put around in our head and taking too much control have never been interrogated. They've never been confronted. Okay. They've never been put on the stand and put under cross examination. And so I want you to hear it from a trial lawyer that we are going to cross examine these voices and we are going to interrogate these stories. Okay? How about we just wipe them out after we've confronted them? Because it is kind of difficult to just say, I'm just going to change my mind. That's not realistic. You actually need to go to where your mind is and then talk to it, confront it, interrogate it, cross examine it, right? And then sentence it to exile, right? Get it up out of there. And now, just like the Bible talks about a person whose body was full of evil spirits or their house was full of evil spirits, okay? They confronted that thing with a broom and they swept everything out, okay? And then they were like, "Whew, so nice to have a clean house." And then they didn't do the work to replace those evil spirits. And so sevenfold more spirits came into that clean house. Are you hearing me? You can clean up your mindset. You can clean up your story. You can clean up your language, sweep it clean. But if you do not fill it back up with the right kind of language, the right kind of mindset, the right kind of story, and ultimately in that story, the right kind of furniture, the right kind of guests, okay, then it's going to get crowded all over again with the wrong kind of story. I need you to hear that and own that and appreciate that application of God's word in this situation. That man swept that house clean of all those evil spirits, but he didn't fill it back up with the right kind of spirits. And so bad spirit plus seven, and seven friends, basically seven times as many evil spirits filled that house. So let's go in here and interrogate, cross examine, okay, on uncover that old story. And then let's sentence it to exile. But now we've got to refill it with the right kind of story. And that's where we need to be very intentional. And so if you are with me, I got me some simple, plain slides because I want you to focus in on this. If you have an opportunity to write it down or type it down, great. If you are just able to think about it in your mind, no problem. If you want to take a screenshot and go back and put in this work later, no problem. We are about to fill this story, all right? And we're going to start from the top. Well, first of all, in 2024, the three main themes of my story will be what? A good trial lawyer always has a theme, okay? I bet you're sitting there thinking right now, when I said trial lawyer and theme, you're probably thinking what? If it doesn't quit, excuse me, if it doesn't fit, you must acquit. Like, theme of the century. No one will ever forget, right? You know what trial that was. You know what lawyer that was. You could probably even see the courtroom, see some of the characters right now. Okay. Theme. Every good trial lawyer has to have a theme that unifies their story, keeps the jury awake, right? And at the end of that trial, you don't even have to say your theme. Everybody in the room knows exactly what your theme is, and they can say it in their sleep with their eyes closed, standing on their head. Okay? If it doesn't fit, you must acquit. So, what's going to be your theme? All right. And many times what we're doing is we're weaving themes, okay? So you can come up with one nice sharp statement like if it doesn't fit, you must quit. Okay, but really there are multiple themes in that one little statement. And that's why I want you to identify your three main themes. I want us to focus that thing in. Okay. In the if it doesn't fit, you must quit. Well, the it was that one glove. They had so much evidence, so many different witnesses, so many different recounts, but they made one love a theme. Okay. Number two, the fit, right? If it doesn't fit, fit who? This one hand, the hand that has been vilified, the hand that has been made to seem like a monster. And I am not commenting on whether and what happened to who, when, and how. I won't. I'm just going to stick with trial strategy. Okay. And at that time, this strategy worked. So it doesn't fit on this hand that we are going to draw attention to. Many times they try to diminish the defendant and keep him quiet and not put too much focus on him um, because they don't want anybody to think of the bad guy. Well, in this theme, right, if it doesn't fit, you must acquit. They went ahead and put all eyes on him. And it was a big risk, but it worked, right? So in that one statement, there were actually three main themes. If it doesn't fit, that's that glove, and fit was that person, right? OJ, you must acquit. You, the jury, is the third theme. You have the responsibility. You have the authority to do something. Those were those three themes in that one little statement. Okay. So I want you to think about what are going to be your three main themes. All right. This is this is that big kind of global goal aspirational side. And if you can think of anything and you're ready to share, feel free to drop it in the chat. But give it some time, give it some thought. What are going to be your themes? And then secondly, this year, the three core values that we're going to be are going to be what? And frankly, these are very similar. They really are. Okay. But I want to offer up to you that the theme is really aspirational and it gets to the story and it gets to the moment. So, for example, the theme of this year for me, right, or my guiding principle, my guiding vision is the biggest impact ever. Biggest impact ever. Okay. Was that really a core value? No, it's not. Maybe built into that core value is service, right? Empowering women, okay, right? And excellence. Maybe built into this idea of my biggest impact ever are some of my core values: service, empowering women, and excellence. Okay, but there is a difference. And so I want you to think about those core values. What are your core values that are going to guide you? Okay. Well, of course, you're going to have to uncover what your values are in the first place. And that's definitely something that I help women do in my coaching programs and my courses. Okay. But I want you to think about that, the three core values that are going to guide you this year. All right. Next, as we are crafting this story, we got to get into the with the details, into the weeds. Okay. Every good trial lawyer gets clear about their main characters. Did you know that we don't have to call every single witness? Every single person who saw it or got an angle of it or, was standing on the rooftop and they saw it down, and that one was sitting in a car and they saw it from that angle, and that one was at the desk and they saw it from right. We do not have to call every witness. And in fact, a smart trial lawyer does not call every witness, not necessarily to suppress the truth, but to not confuse the issues, right? We streamline this thing. Absolutely. In the last trial that I was in, we spent time talking to people, thought they were great and wonderful, and oh, they would be such great witnesses. Then we had to make a decision. Does the benefit of all the wonderful things that they're going to say outweigh the risk of boring the jury or keeping them here for another 3 days? Right? Or we're at a point where a lot is going really well. We've gotten out our main themes. We think the jury can quote those themes back to us. So, do we really want to take up more of their time just piling on? All right. I know that sounds kind of silly, but from my world as a trial attorney, we're making these strategic decisions. Okay. So, look, this just means in your practical life that not everybody is going to go on the journey. Not everybody is going to have a front and center main role. Some people might be supporting actor. Okay. Some people might be on the tech team or lighting. Okay. Some people might be escorted out stage left. Okay, be the main characters in your story. I really hope you're one of them. I really hope that you center yourself in your own story as the main character, that you exercise some agency and some authority in your own life. Hello, that you don't feel ashamed to say, I'm in charge of my life, right? Submit myself and my will to God, but I am not abdicating my responsibility and pretending like He's going to get me dressed in the morning. He woke me up, amen. But if I do not put these pants on with the hands that He gave me, my behind will be out in the cold. Okay. Okay. Hashtag agency. Hashtag agency. Then the next piece I want you to think about, who are going to be, or what are going to be the main scenes in your story? Where are things going to play out? Where are you going to spend your time? Okay. When we are developing the story for a trial, we also got to make some decisions about what pieces of the story that we're going to tell, where we're going to put people, and how we're going to bring them in. Okay. But we could tell a story about what a wonderful father our client is, as an example. We bring the jury into the home, right? And we build that up, provide details and smells and tastes and colors and all of that, right? But what if we really just need to keep them at the scene of the hospital, okay, in the room where the patient is getting treated, so that they can see our client saving this person's life, rescuing them from their worst day ever, right? Does that mean that the story of him being a father is not important? No, but we did have to make a choice. And so I want you to make some choices in your story this year about where you're going to be, what scenes you're going to be in. And that ultimately gets down to how and where you're going to spend your time, right? You're going to be in plenty of places. You're going to go to the store, that'll be a scene, and you'll be in the car, and that'll be a scene, and you'll go to church, and that'll be a scene. I get that, right? But this is about making a decision about the main scenes. Where am I really going to spend my time and give my best and my best? I want you to make some decisions about that. Okay. Is it going to be at home? Is it going to be in platforms helping others? Is it going to be at church? Is it going to be at the school? Where? Right? Am I going to sleep under my desk this year? Hashtag no. Hashtag no more for Karla. Okay. Okay. But so many times we feel like we have to do it a certain way. We are not thoughtful about how we want it to be. That's what this is about. And then I want you to think about what the beginning of the story is going to be like. You might be saying, well, Carla, it's already January 19th. The beginning is over. I don't agree with that. Actually, I do not. Technically, we're still in the first half of the year through the end of June. So that could be considered the beginning. But today could also be considered your beginning, right? And if you wanted to rewrite your story on November the 17th, which happens to be my birthday, that would be a whole nother beginning that you would need to write. But what's the beginning of your story going to be? And I really want you to decide that. You, again, might be asking yourself, well, you know, God has to write my story. I can't always know how things are going to go. That is absolutely true. You do not have control over everything. You don't. But I caution you to abdicate authority and responsibility over the things that you do have authority over, that you do have control over. Caution you, right? And I definitely want you to leave this room knowing that you have control over the way you tell the story to yourself and to others. So why not take time now to tell how you want the beginning of your story to be? How do you want it to go? And I have a feeling once you start speaking in that direction and intending in that direction, you'll start moving in that direction. It's the law, y'all. And finally, what is going to be the closing chapter of your story? I anticipate that the closing chapter of my story in 2024 is going to center on what? My joy, my peace, my happiness, me feeling pleased with the situation, me having achieved this goal that I never thought that I would, me having established some routines that support me and crucified some habits that don't, right? Tell me, what is that closing chapter going to look like for you? When I achieve my year of biggest impact, what's that going to look like? Okay. For me, because that's my thing, my year of biggest impact. If you take nothing else from this, I want you to take the fact that you have authority over your story and specifically how you tell it. I want you to remember that you are your first audience in telling your story, and you got to believe it. And then I want you to think about your external audience because out of the mouth, the heart speaks, right? And we can create life or death with our tongues because the power of life and death lies in the power of our tongue. So if your story is consistently about, oh, I'm so tired, child, I'm so tired. Okay. I'm not having a good year. Everything is going bad. It's been hard for me, right? You're going to continue to manifest that. Even as I say it, I'm feeling the energy around it. Okay. But if you start to tell your story in a way that brings life, if you've been with us, I've been dropping in the chat vocabulary updates. Yesterday, oh, amazing. We're talking about money. And the sister said, um, I'm not broke, I'm between blessings. Oh, that's gonna write a story. I am between blessings. Yes, amen. Okay. So again, I hope that you'll take the opportunity to do the work and you'll think about this. What are going to be the themes or values, the main characters, the main scenes? It's going to be that beginning and what's going to be that ending. And you ultimately can position yourself in that story. This resonates with me because when it comes to um, my time in the law firm, right, I was telling myself that most of the Black girls don't ever make it up in here in the first place. We're like less than 1% of attorneys in large global law firms. And then, secondly, if we do make it, we don't stay for very long. The average time that these women leave, Black women, is year two. By year two of your time at that firm, okay, I was adopting those statistics. And then when I found myself at year seven and or 6 and 7, I was listening to a mentor who was telling me that they have it out for you. They have it out for all the Black people, all the Black women, especially. And less than 1% of all the partners, less than 2% of all partners in big law are Black. And then the number gets even smaller for women. Okay. Um, and so they're not trying to have it work for you. These are stories that I was hearing and that I was adopting and incorporating into my own narrative. Okay. And so now when I look at how things went, right, versus how I made them happen, I abdicated authority. I adopted the story that was placed on me by statistics that are real or by people who were well meaning instead of me deciding affirmatively what my story would be. And there are some points that stand out for me that I'm very proud of, that I took a hold of the situation in my career and I made that thing happen. And it's blessing me today, even after having left that firm and started my own, it's blessing me today. Okay. So it wasn't all bad, but definitely as we're in these careers and these male dominated and white dominated environments, many times we're sabotaging our own success by the way that we talk about it and tell our story about what it is, what it isn't, and what it's going to be. So I offer that to you and I hope it's been a blessing to you. Okay. I have more to share, but it is truly a pivot into a relatively different part of the topic. And I want to honor your time as well as your attention and close out um, my formal presentation part right now and get to any questions that you may have. Thank you all so much.